Dr. Nahai wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stared at the strange rock formations ahead. The planet Kepler 442c was supposed to be a simple job. Find some rare minerals, mark their locations, and head home. Easy money for the mining company. But these rocks didn't look natural at all. "Hey, Dong-Su, come look at this," she called to her teammate. The young geologist jogged over, his scanner beeping softly in his hands. "These aren't rocks," Dong-Su said, running his fingers along the smooth surface. "This is carved stone. Someone built this." Nahai felt her heart skip a beat. In 15 years of planetary surveys, she had never found alien ruins. The galaxy was full of different species, but finding actual ancient structures was rare. Most civilizations built in space or on their homeworlds. "Get Junki and Mira over here," she ordered. "We need a full team scan." The 4 humans spent the next 3 hours mapping the site. What they found made no sense. The structures were clearly artificial, but they didn't match any known alien architecture in the galactic database. The stonework was beautiful, but simple. No weapons, no defensive walls, no signs of war or conflict. "It's like they were peaceful people," Mira said, studying her tablet. "Everything here suggests a society that never fought anyone." They found the entrance on day 2. A narrow passage led deep underground, so small that the humans had to crawl. Their headlamps cut through the darkness as they moved deeper into the structure. "Do you hear that?" Junki whispered. They all stopped and listened. There was something, like soft breathing, maybe whispers coming from ahead. Nahai's pulse quickened. "Hello?" she called out softly. "Is someone there?" The sounds stopped immediately. They continued forward until the narrow tunnel opened into a large chamber. Nahai gasped. The room was filled with what looked like living crystals, each about 3 feet tall. But these weren't just pretty rocks. They had arms, legs, and faces. They were people. The crystalline beings huddled together in fear, their bodies dim and cracked. Some were clearly sick. Others looked like they hadn't eaten in weeks. Children hid behind adults, their crystal skin barely glowing. "My God," Mira breathed. "They're alive." One of the aliens stepped forward slowly. Its body flickered with weak light as it spoke in a musical language none of the humans understood. Nahai activated her universal translator. The device struggled for a moment, then began converting the alien words. "Please, do not hurt us," the translator said in a mechanical voice. "We have nothing you want." "We're not here to hurt anyone," Nahai said gently. "We're explorers. We found your home by accident." The alien's crystal body flickered brighter for a moment. "Explorers? You are not with the Council? The Galactic Council? No, we're humans. We're just doing research here." More aliens emerged from the shadows. Nahai counted at least 50, maybe more. They all looked hungry and afraid. Some had cracks in their crystal skin that looked painful. "How long have you been hiding here?" Dong-Su asked. The alien leader spoke again. Through the translator, they learned a terrible story. The Vithani had once lived openly in the galaxy. They were peaceful people who could store energy in their crystal bodies and help other species solve problems without violence. But when Galactic War started, nobody wanted peace. The major powers wanted soldiers, weapons, and resources. The Vithani had none of these things. They refused to fight and couldn't build war machines. "The Council declared us obsolete," the Vithani leader explained. "They said we served no purpose. They moved us here and told us to stay hidden." That was over 200 years ago. They said someone would come for us, but no one ever did. Nahai felt sick to her stomach. These people had been abandoned like unwanted animals, left to starve on a forgotten planet because they wouldn't fight wars for other species. "Have you had any food?" Mira asked, pulling emergency rations from her pack. The Vithani children moved forward eagerly, but their parents held them back. "So we cannot pay you," the leader said sadly. "You don't need to pay us," Nahi said firmly. "Food is free." She handed out her entire supply of emergency rations. The other humans did the same. They watched as the Vithani shared the small meals, carefully, making sure everyone got something. Later that night, back at their camp, Nahi sent a priority message to Captain Jin Ho on the orbital station. "Captain, we need to talk immediately. We've found something incredible down here. These people need help and they need it now." Jin Ho's response came back within an hour. Sending shuttle for immediate pickup. Bring everything you've documented. As Nahai packed her equipment, she couldn't stop thinking about the Vithani children. Their crystal bodies should have been bright and beautiful, but instead they were dim and cracked from years of hunger and neglect. Someone had to speak for these people. Someone had to care. Maybe humans could be that someone. Captain Jin-Ho straightened his uniform one last time before entering the massive council chamber. The circular rooms stretched high above him, with seats for dozens of different alien species. He had spent 3 sleepless nights preparing his presentation about the Vithani. Surely, when the council saw the evidence, they would act quickly to help. He carried a data pad filled with photos and videos from Nahai's team, images of starving Vithani children, their crystal bodies cracked and dim. Medical scans showing malnutrition and disease. Historical records proving they had been abandoned for over 2 centuries. This should be straightforward, Jin-Ho told himself. No civilized species would ignore suffering like this. The session began with the usual formalities. Representatives from 43 different species filled the chamber. The Korathi delegation sat in their ornate military uniforms, their reptilian faces showing no emotion. The Zalani merchants whispered among themselves, calculating profits even during council meetings. The tall, ethereal beings from the collective floated in their energy pods, looking down at everyone else. When Jin-Ho's turn came, he stepped to the center platform. His presentation began simply. He showed the location of Kepler 442c and explained how his survey team had found the ruins. "Honorable council members," he said, "we have discovered a forgotten species in desperate need of assistance." The first images appeared on the massive screens around the chamber. Vithani families huddled together in dark caves. Children, too, weak to stand. Adults sharing tiny portions of fungus they had managed to grow in the ruins. Jin-Ho expected gasps of shock or immediate offers of aid. Instead, he heard something much worse. Boredom. The Korathi representative was checking his personal communicator. 2 Zilani delegates were playing some kind of holographic card game. "These are the Vithani," Jin-Ho continued, raising his voice. "They were abandoned here over 200 years ago. They're starving. Their population has dropped from thousands to less than 100 survivors." Finally, someone spoke up. Commander Zexhai of the Korathi military leaned forward in his seat. "Captain Jin-Ho," the reptilian said in a cold voice. "Why exactly should this concern the council?" Jin-Ho blinked in surprise. "Because they're dying. They need food, medical care, and proper shelter." "And what do they offer in return?" asked Merchant Velara from the Zalani Trade Union. "What resources do they control? What services can they provide?" "They're people," Jin-Ho said, his voice rising slightly. "They don't need to offer anything, they just need help." Laughter rippled through parts of the chamber. Not cruel laughter, but the kind of dismissive chuckling that hurt even worse. "Commander?" Zexhai stood up slowly. "Captain, the Vithani were evaluated centuries ago. Our military scientists determined they have no strategic value. They cannot fight, they cannot build weapons. They control no important territories. They are evolutionary failures." "Evolutionary failures?" Jin-Ho repeated, unable to believe what he was hearing. "Correct," Zexhai continued. "Species that refuse to adapt to galactic realities, cannot expect protection from those who have evolved properly." Merchant Velara nodded in agreement. "The Zalani Trade Confederation has reviewed the Vithani economic profile. Their planet has minimal mineral wealth. They produce no exports. They consume resources without generating profit. Helping them would be a net loss for the galactic economy." Jin-Ho felt his hands shaking. "You're talking about people like their investment opportunities." "Everything is an investment, Captain," Velara replied with a smile that didn't reach her large eyes. "The galaxy runs on practical decisions, not emotional ones. The worst response came from the ethereal collective. Their spokesperson, a being of pure energy named Wisdom Keeper Luxandra, spoke in a voice like distant music. "The collective has considered this matter carefully," Luxandra said. "Our resources are limited, even with our advanced technology. We must choose which civilizations deserve our assistance. The Vithani have contributed nothing to galactic advancement. Their pacifist philosophy prevented them from achieving greatness. We believe our aid would be better spent on species with greater potential. Jin-Ho stared at her in disbelief. Greater potential? They're dying. Many species face extinction, Captain, Luxandra replied calmly. It is the natural order. We cannot save everyone, so we save those worth saving. The formal vote was almost insulting in how quickly it happened. Species after species voted against providing any aid to the Vithani. Some gave economic reasons, others cited resource limitations. A few simply said it wasn't their responsibility. When the final tally appeared on the chamber screens, Jin-Ho felt sick. 41 species voted against helping the Vithani. Only humanity had voted in favor. One abstention from a minor species that probably hadn't been paying attention. The motion fails, announced the council speaker. No official aid will be provided to the Vithani population. As delegates began filing out of the chamber, Jin-Ho stood frozen on the center platform. Around him, alien representatives chatted casually about lunch plans and trade meetings. They had just condemned an entire species to death, and they were discussing their afternoon schedules. Commander Zexhai paused as he walked past. Captain, a word of advice. In this galaxy, sentiment is a luxury only the strong can afford. Humanity is still new here. Learn to make practical decisions, or you'll find yourselves in the same position as your crystal friends. Jin-Ho watched, the chamber empty until he was alone with his thoughts. The datapad in his hands still showed images of starving Vithani children. Children that every major galactic power had just decided weren't worth saving. He made his decision right there, in that empty chamber. If the galaxy wouldn't help the Vithani, then humanity would do it alone. Earth's government might not like it. The other species might call it foolish. But someone had to care about the abandoned. Someone had to prove that strength wasn't just about weapons and profits. Captain Jin-Ho stood on the observation deck of his ship, staring down at the planet where the Vithani waited. His personal communicator had been buzzing for 3 hours straight, with messages from Earth Command. He knew what they all said without reading them. Come home. Follow orders. Don't cause trouble. He turned off the communicator and walked to the ship's communication center. Open a channel to all human colonies and Earth, he told the communications officer. Sir, Earth Command specifically ordered radio silence until you return, the young officer said nervously. I'm still the captain of this ship, Jin-Ho replied firmly. Open the channel. The communication went out across human space. Jin-Ho's message was simple and direct. The Vithani were now under human protection. Any human who wanted to help was welcome. Earth's government could complain all they wanted, but he wasn't abandoning people who needed help. Within 6 hours, his ship's communication system was overloaded with responses. Doctors wanting to provide medical aid, engineers offering to build proper shelters, farmers asking about soil conditions, even retired soldiers volunteering to provide security. The first shuttle arrived 3 days later. Engineer Tae-min stepped off the transport with a team of construction specialists and enough building materials to house a small city. Captain, Tae-min said with a grin, we heard you might need some help down here. This could end your career, Jin-Ho warned him. Earth Command is furious, Tae-min shrugged. I've built bridges on 12 different worlds. Time I built something that really mattered. Dr. Yi so arrived on the second shuttle with a full medical team and portable hospital equipment. She was one of the galaxy's leading experts on alien biology, and she had left a prestigious research position to come help. I've been studying crystal-based life forms for 20 years, she told Jin-Ho. These people deserve proper medical care. The Vithani watched in amazement as humans swarmed over their hidden valley, building structures and setting up equipment. They had been forgotten for so long that the sight of people actually working to help them was almost too much to believe. Tae-min's first discovery came while setting up power generators for the new settlement. A young Vithani named Crystal Song approached him while he was struggling with a failing battery pack. May I help? She asked through the translation device. Tae-min was about to explain that the battery was dead when Crystal Song gently touched the power pack with her crystalline hand. Immediately, the device hummed back to life, fully charged. How did you do that? Tae-min asked in amazement. Crystal Song looked confused. I gave it energy. All Vithani can do this. Within days, Tae-min realized the implications. The Vithani could store almost unlimited amounts of energy in their crystal bodies and release it in perfectly controlled amounts. They could power entire settlements without any external energy source. More importantly, they could purify any type of energy, making it clean and safe. They're living batteries, Taemin explained to Jinho, but better than any technology we've ever developed. They can take solar energy, geothermal energy, even radiation, and convert it into clean power. Dr. Yiso made an even more remarkable discovery while treating sick Vithani children. She noticed that whenever she felt stressed or upset during medical procedures, the Vithani would gently touch her arm. Immediately, her anxiety would disappear, replaced by a sense of calm and peace. They can heal emotional trauma, she told Jinho excitedly. Not just their own, but any species. They absorb negative emotions and somehow neutralize them. The first human patient was a former soldier named Kyung-soo, who had volunteered for security duty. He suffered from severe trauma after losing his unit in a mining accident years earlier. The nightmares had plagued him for decades. After spending just 1 hour with an elderly Vithani healer named Memory Keeper, Kyung-soo slept peacefully for the first time in 20 years. I can't explain it, he told Yiso. The memories are still there, but they don't hurt anymore. It's like the pain just dissolved. Word spread quickly through human space. More volunteers arrived every week. Some came to help with construction. Others brought food and supplies. Many came seeking the emotional healing that only the Vithani could provide. The settlement grew rapidly. Proper houses replaced the underground caves. Medical facilities ensured no Vithani would go hungry again. Schools where human children and Vithani young ones learned together. Gardens where both species worked side by side, growing food and beautiful crystal formations. For the first time in over 2 centuries, Vithani crystal bodies glowed brightly with health and happiness. Their children played openly instead of hiding in shadows. Their elders shared stories and knowledge that had been preserved through generations of hiding. But success brought problems. Earth's government demanded immediate withdrawal of all human personnel. The colonial authority sent increasingly angry messages threatening court-martial for Jinho and anyone who didn't return immediately. You're causing a diplomatic crisis, Admiral Park Seo told Jinho during a tense video call. The Karathi are claiming you're occupying their territory. The Zalani are threatening trade sanctions. The Ethereal Collective is questioning humanity's judgment. Good, Jinho replied calmly. Maybe they'll start questioning their own judgment. 2. Captain, this is not a request. Earth Command orders you to evacuate immediately and return for disciplinary action. Jinho looked out his window at the thriving settlement below. Human and Vithani families were having dinner together. Children of both species were playing in the crystal gardens. Engineers and healers were working side by side to build something beautiful. Admiral, he said slowly, with all due respect, I'm going to have to decline that order. The transmission ended abruptly. Jinho knew that Earth would probably send ships to force their withdrawal. Other galactic powers might try to intervene, but looking at the settlement below, he knew they had made the right choice. Sometimes doing the right thing meant making everyone else angry. Sometimes it meant risking everything you had built. But when the choice was between following orders and saving lives, Jinho knew which side humanity should be on. The question now was whether enough humans would agree with him when the real fighting started. The warning came without any diplomatic courtesy. Commander Zexhai's message appeared on Jinho's personal communicator at exactly 600 hours, delivered with typical Karathi bluntness. Captain Jinho, the Karathi Empire hereby claims exclusive mineral rights to planet Kepler 442c under Galactic Mining Treaty 447b. All human personnel have 72 hours to evacuate completely. Any resistance will be considered an act of war. Jinho read the message 3 times before its full meaning sank in. The Karathi hadn't just decided to help themselves to Vithani land. They were giving humanity 3 days to abandon people who had already been abandoned once before. His second message came 30 minutes later, this time from Earth Command. Admiral Park Seo's face filled the screen, and she looked exhausted. Captain, I'm not going to waste time with pleasantries. The Karathi have filed formal complaints with the Galactic Council. They're claiming you've illegally occupied their territory. Earth cannot risk a war over unauthorized humanitarian aid. Jin Ho felt his jaw clench. Unauthorized humanitarian aid? Is that what we're calling it now? The decision has been made. At the highest levels, you have 48 hours to evacuate all human personnel and equipment. That's final. And the Vithani? Admiral Park hesitated. That's not our responsibility anymore. After the transmission ended, Jin Ho sat alone in his quarters for nearly an hour. Outside his window, he could see the settlement bustling with activity. Human children were learning crystal singing from Vithani elders. Engineers and healers were working together on new projects. Families from 2 different species were building something beautiful together. He thought about Crystal Song, the young Vithani who had helped Tae-min with the power generators. She had asked him just yesterday if humans would really stay forever, or if they were just visiting like all the others. Jin Ho made his decision. Instead of preparing evacuation orders, he walked to the settlement's communication center. Engineer Tae-min looked up in surprise as the captain entered with a camera crew. "Sir, are we making a status report?" "Something like that," Jin Ho replied. "I need to send a message to every human colony, every space station, every ship in human space." The broadcast began simply. Jin Ho stood in the main settlement square with Vithani families visible in the background. But instead of talking about politics or military threats, he let the evidence speak for itself. The footage began with old archives Dr. Na-hee had discovered in the Vithani historical records, images of Vithani relocation camps where thousands had been crowded into tiny spaces, videos of forced labor operations where crystal beings were used as living batteries until their bodies cracked and failed, documentation of systematic neglect that had reduced their population from over 50,000 to less than 100 survivors. "This is what galactic civilization did to the Vithani," Jin Ho said calmly, "and now they want to finish the job." The broadcast showed the contrast. Healthy Vithani children playing in crystal gardens, families eating proper meals for the first time in decades, healers working with human doctors to treat both species, a thriving community where no one was exploiting anyone else. The Karathi Empire wants to claim this planet for mining rights, Jin Ho continued. Earth Command has ordered us to abandon these people. I'm asking every human who believes in doing what's right to make their own choice. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The first ship arrived 18 hours later. The merchant vessel Lucky Strike dropped out of hyperspace and immediately hailed Jin Ho's ship. "Captain, this is Merchant Captain Hae-won of the Lucky Strike. We heard your broadcast. Where do you want us?" "Captain Hae-won, you should know that Karathi warships are coming. This could get dangerous." "Captain Jin Ho, I've been trading in this sector for 15 years. I've seen what happens to species that get relocated by the major powers. My ship and crew are staying." More ships arrived throughout the day, mining vessels from the asteroid belt, colony transports that had diverted from their planned routes. Even a few military vessels whose crews had ignored direct orders from Earth Command. Lieutenant Bin Ki, Jin Ho's communications officer, found himself coordinating an impromptu fleet of over 200 civilian vessels within 48 hours. "Sir, we've got cargo haulers, passenger liners, research ships, and at least 30 mining vessels," Bin Ki reported. "Most of them have never worked together before, but they're all asking the same question. Which is, where do you want us when the shooting starts?" When the Karathi battle fleet arrived, they found something no military strategist had planned for. Instead of a small human settlement that could be easily overwhelmed, they faced a massive civilian blockade spread across the planet's orbital. Space Commander Zexai opened communications immediately. "Human vessels, you are in violation of Karathi territorial claims. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Lieutenant Bin Ki coordinated the response. Over 200 human captains answered simultaneously, their voices creating a chorus that filled the communication channels. "Negative, Karathi fleet, we're staying. This is not a military operation," Zexai replied, his reptilian voice rising in anger. "These are civilian vessels. They have no business in a territorial dispute." Captain Hae-won's voice cut through the chatter. "Commander, with respect, we're not here as military vessels. We're here as neighbors. And neighbors don't let bullies hurt their friends." The standoff stretched for hours. Karathi warships, bristling with weapons and armor, faced a ragtag collection of human civilian vessels, cargo haulers that had never fired a shot in anger, passenger liners carrying families, research ships equipped with mining lasers and construction tools instead of proper weapons. But they didn't retreat. "This is insanity," Zexhai broadcast to the entire human fleet. "You cannot defeat a Karathi battle group with merchant ships and mining equipment." "Probably not," admitted Captain Sujin of the mining vessel Deep Digger, "but we can make it expensive, and we can make sure the whole galaxy watches what happens when major powers attack civilian vessels protecting refugees." Down on the planet's surface, Vithani families gathered in the crystal gardens, their bodies glowing brighter than they had in centuries. For the first time in over 200 years, someone was fighting for them instead of fighting over them. Human volunteers and Vithani healers stood together, watching the sky and waiting to see if the galaxy still had room for people who cared more about doing right than being safe. Part 5. The New Alliance. The tension in space had reached a breaking point. Ships from different worlds floated in the Yi. Darkness, weapons charged, waiting for someone to make the first move. But instead of fighting, something unexpected happened. The most powerful alien leaders called for an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. This wasn't just any ordinary meeting. For the first time in centuries, every major species in the galaxy was forced to sit down and really talk about what was happening. The humans had done something that shocked everyone. They had stood up to the most feared civilizations in the galaxy and somehow lived to tell about it. In the great council chambers, representatives from dozens of worlds gathered. The atmosphere was thick with uncertainty. Some aliens still believed humans were just another primitive species that needed to be controlled or eliminated, but others had started to see something different in these strange creatures from Earth. Commander Rodriguez stood before the assembled alien leaders, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "We didn't come here to conquer anyone," she said, looking directly at each delegation. "We came here because we believe every species deserves the right to exist peacefully. That includes the ones you've forgotten about," the Zolonian ambassador hissed in frustration. "Humans speak of peace while harboring refugees and outcasts. You disturb the natural order of things." But then, something remarkable happened. One by one, representatives from smaller species began to stand up. The Corvani delegate, whose people had been driven from their homeworld decades ago, spoke first. "The humans offered us shelter when no one else would. They asked for nothing in return." An elderly Thraxian, whose species had been scattered across the galaxy, added, "These humans protected our children when pirates attacked our convoy. They risked their own lives for beings they had never met before." The council chamber buzzed with murmurs of surprise. Many of the major powers had never heard these smaller species speak up before. They were used to making decisions without considering the forgotten peoples of the galaxy. Then came the moment that changed everything. The Vithani ambassador, tall and graceful with silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the chamber's light, rose slowly from her seat. The entire room fell silent. The Vithani rarely spoke in council meetings, and when they did, everyone listened. "My people remember," she began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. "Long ago, before most of your civilizations had learned to fly between stars, the Vithani were the peacekeepers of this galaxy. We protected trade routes, mediated disputes, and sheltered those who had nowhere else to go." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But then came the great war between the ancient powers. Both sides demanded we choose. They wanted us to abandon our neutrality and fight for them. When we refused to betray our principles, both sides turned against us. They branded us as traitors and drove us to the edges of known space." The human delegation listened intently. They had heard rumors about the Vithani's past, but never the full story. For 1,000 years, we have watched as this galaxy descended into cycles of conquest and abandonment. The Vithani ambassador continued. "Species rise to power, exploit the weak, then cast them aside when they are no longer useful. We thought this pattern would never change." She turned to face the human delegation directly. "But you have shown us something we had almost forgotten. That strength can be used to protect rather than dominate. Your people risk everything to shelter the abandoned, not because you gain anything from it, but because you believe it is right." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. The Vithani had never spoken so openly about their history or shown such support for any species. Commander Rodriguez felt her heart racing. She stepped forward. "If the Vithani are willing, we would be honored to work together. Earth proposes something new, not an empire or a conquest, but a protectorate, a partnership where stronger species use their power to shield the vulnerable." The Vithani ambassador smiled, the first time anyone in the chamber had seen such an expression from her people. "The Vithani accept this proposal. We offer our knowledge, our ships, and our commitment to creating the first human Vithani protectorate." The announcement sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Within hours, communication channels across hundreds of worlds were buzzing with the news. For the first time in galactic history, two species had formally united not for conquest or trade, but for protection. The older powers were furious. The Zolonians threatened economic sanctions. The Thek Empire warned of military consequences, but their threats felt hollow now. Too many species had witnessed human courage and Vithani wisdom working together. Over the following weeks, something beautiful began to happen. Ships arrived at human colonies not with demands or weapons, but with requests for help. The Nalari, whose homeworld was dying from industrial poisoning, asked for assistance in finding a new planet. The scattered clans of the Morphex sought protection for their merchant fleets. Each time the human Vithani Protectorate responded with aid, rather than exploitation. They provided safe passage, shared technology for healing poisoned worlds, and offered military protection without demanding submission in return. The galaxy was witnessing the birth of something entirely new, a civilization built on guardianship, rather than dominance. And at its heart were the humans, the species that everyone had underestimated, proving that sometimes the greatest strength comes from choosing to protect rather than conquer. The age of abandonment was ending, and the age of the Guardians had begun.